about to watch the left debate. The candidates are Santiago and Mia. Back to you, MMN.
I believe that we should be tackling the problems that seniors have most, I'd say. Particularly, I think food is a big issue. The ways I would go about it is through getting feedback from my fellow students, like the ones here.
Me personally, I believe that all of the people at this school should have their voices heard. I'm not running for senior class president, I'm running for president of SOSAS, so I believe every grade level's problems are equally as important.
I think the most obvious one is that, I'm not being elected by fourth graders. I'm not gonna, start making policies for fourth graders, fifth graders. I'm being elected by seniors. By you.
So you only care about the issues that affect the people that vote for you?
Well, I didn't say only. I said I prioritize because they are who I'm representing. But
if you want to focus on your electorate, what programs exactly could you run that would benefit us now? Because our senior year is almost over. What else could you do that would help us?
Well, providing more jobs is a big thing I would like to do. Specifically with lunch, I think food is a big issue for all of us. And there are not that many ways to get lunch. There's only one cafeteria option. There's only one student store. And specifically with the student store, it's always jam-packed. There's only one worker there. A big one that everyone's been talking about is the fourth and fifth graders. I think that we've all been pretty annoyed by them coming into our area, cutting into lines, stuff like that. I believe a more gentle approach rather than other candidates like sectioning them off, more of containment. Many of us have siblings that are in lower grades. I think it's best, we want to keep them close, but not too close. Their student store over there, just fully containing them in one area, not really sectioning them off.
Well, to start with, when I was talking about the food, I was specifically talking about lunch carts for non-elementary schoolers, because if anyone's ever tried to get lunch from one of those carts, they will not give it to you if you are higher than here. I believe a much more pressing issue than the fourth and fifth graders is the issue with the bathrooms. I'm assuming everybody here has had an issue with finding a bathroom that is open. It's impossible to know which bathrooms are open and which ones are closed at any given moment. And if the only available bathroom is all the way across campus from your class, sucks. I believe that either getting more campus bathrooms open or having some way to notify students which bathrooms are open at any given time, so that you don't have to be wandering around campus checking out 3 different bathrooms that are all closed for 15 minutes before you can finally go use the restroom. One of the big things affecting high schoolers today is mental health issues, and one of the major causes of that is acute stressors, so small moments and periods of stress that occur repeatedly and lead to chronic stress, which could have all sorts of negative health implications, and also it just makes you feel bad. And so I believe that we can treat acute stress by having a stuffed animal, mental health stuffed animals in the classroom available for people to use or have there for emotional support and stress relief during moments in class where they may feel overwhelmed or frustrated, and that way they can sort of help regulate their emotions so that it doesn't become a larger issue.
I like the idea. I think it'd be nice to have some, plush animals to help mental health, but I feel like there are more effective ways than just having a bunch of plushies around. I believe more in sort of third spaces. I think SOSAS really lacks that, especially after COVID. You had a lot of areas kind of closing down, and the school feels a lot more sterile. I feel like introducing more friendly environments or a more centralized hub to SOSAS would be better than some plushies.
So I'm curious as to why you think that students aren't engaging with each other. Because for me personally, when I'm sitting out in the cafeteria, or where I'm hanging out in the little grassy patches near the 200s, I see my friends and I see people from other grades that I can talk to and interact with. So even if seniors are inside classrooms, they're typically inside classrooms talking with their friends, eating lunch with their friends. Because I think the thing that's kind of overlooked is if you have activities that are happening during lunch, when do you have time to eat the lunch?
I never said it was harmful. I just think that a benefit towards, doing activities is fun, right? And I'm not saying every single day, be out and about, but to help mental health, to help make SOSAS have a stronger sense of community. We're 4th through 12th school, we're pretty small. I think the school needs some sort of, community aspect back into it. I personally feel like that's been lost over the years, and I would like to see that being brought back more.
we've had ASB run events in Center Circle. We had the buddy party at the start of the year. We had the Halloween carnival for all of the 4th and 5th graders. So I'm trying to figure out what you think that you could provide that organizations like ASB and Senior Cabinet haven't already been providing. That the issue with the fights isn't necessarily that students don't feel connected to each other, because a lot, if you look at the fights from earlier this year, the reason that these fights happen is, I heard you talking smack about my friend, blah, 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 and then suddenly hands are being thrown. And actually, if you look at the California Education Code, inciting physical violence or threatening another student is actually grounds for expulsion or other less severe punishments. All policies that the school has the ability to implement, they just don't. And I think that as a school, we need to start doing that. We need to have actual punishments for when people start fights.
I'd say a big reason why these fights escalate so much is this kind of mob mentality that we have. I mean, I like to remember to the last fight we had where it was just one incident of two, I don't even know what grade they were, just two kids arguing, and then a huge cesspool of people came in. And I believe that is a real issue. While I agree with Mia, the school kind of just waves threats around, but they don't really do anything about it. I think a bigger issue is this mob mentality. Now, how I would go about solving this would really be, I think one of the major ways I can prevent against this is, where the fights usually happen are in highly congested areas. So I believe that kind of splitting those apart would be kind of beneficial, but I would have to think about that more.
Can I have a rebuttal?
Yes.
So you agree with my policy that we should have other lunch carts, because the reason people are in the cafeteria is because they're in the lunch line. And that is that congested area where all these fights are happening. So you agree with my policy that we should be having more lunch carts around so that there's less congestion in the cafeteria. Because that is the main way that we stop congestion in the cafeteria, which is where these fights are happening, and that's what you're talking about.
I would agree. Honestly, actually holding people accountable. I'll agree with Mia there. I feel like these administrators, they kind of walk around like they can clearly see phones in pockets, but they don't do anything about it. I feel like if the school really wants to continue on with Beyond Their Pouches, they should kind of stick with it, really crack down on people who are having contraband, and just instead of just letting people slide, really hold them accountable.
I think that what we should be looking for when it comes to the phones isn't punishment. I don't know if any of you guys have had to do this, but earlier this semester, I had to walk to the main office to use the phone there to call my dad, and I really, I don't think any person in the main office has any business knowing whatever emergency I need to deal with at that time. I don't need them in my business like that, and so I think we need to have more lenience and understanding and flexibility when there are things that students do need to use their phones for, like contacting their parents in the case of an emergency, or being contacted by their parents. I think we should bring back those little pouches on the walls of a classroom. Do any of you guys have Miss Gordon or Mr. Teleco? And they have those little numbered pouches. Yeah, so if we do something like that instead, and you check in your phone at the start of the period and then pick it up at the end of the period, then students would be able to have freer communication with each other and with their parents during breaks, but they would be rid of the distraction during class time, which I think is the fundamental part that the Yonder Bags were trying to combat. So if we enable stricter class policies, but looser break policies, then we could have a more effective ban.
Who would actually impose it? I don't think leniency is a way. You give them an inch, they take a mile. So, for one, having phones, I think the whole idea and the premise behind the Yonder Bags and this phone ban is to prevent other side effects of phone, not just, interfering with the classroom, specifically fights. To go into our previous topics, a bigger reason why these fights get so big is because they're sensational. People want to have their phones out and record them. And having phones not during breaks will definitely help to minimize that. Because
I had a fight earlier this semester after the Yonder Bath pouches took effect.
And did you see how many kids immediately pulled out their phone and went recording? Because I did. I was right next to the fight. And you could see a whole crowd of people take out their phones, rush into the center, circle them, and start recording.
I just don't think that people start the fights because of the phone.
But it makes it worse. You had a ring of people chanting on fight while having their cameras out. I feel like that kind of environment would get minimalized by not having phones. You wouldn't have.
I think that tackling the phone issue is tackling a symptom of the fight and not the root cause, which is that people aren't afraid of the consequences. And if we focus too much on symptoms or on symptomatic issues, then we're not going to be able to focus on the real root cause, which is actual prevention of fights. We're not just talking about preventing them from getting worse, we're talking about stopping them entirely. I think a majority of the current dress code policy works well enough. I think the only issue is with obviously the hats and the branding. Unless something harmful is written on the hat or they depict things that are banned at school like weapons, I don't see an issue with having a logo on a hat. And so I think that is part of the dress code that could be loosened a little bit, but the rest of it I don't see an issue with.
I agree. I think that any sort of logo requirement or color requirement should just get rid of, should just be taken away. And if one were to argue for more dress code, I would argue no, I think that's it. I think our current dress code's good and our students know how to dress, just get rid of the logo and color requirements. I think that's silly. I think that getting rid of a Dodgers hat because it might be a gang sign. It might be a gang sign is pretty ridiculous. I mean, we live in LA. That's, our team. I feel like they're just trying to fearmonger us.
The allegations of gang signs are a very convenient way to racially profile students. I have never ever seen students of a lighter complexion get told off for wearing a Dodgers hat. So I think that the idea of kids are walking around with gang signs and it's just a sports cap is absurd and a convenient way for the administration to place us in certain boxes based off our appearances.
I would say that our core values is utilizing, not leeching, right? I feel like as a member of the Left Party, I would promote more improvements and more sort of welfare programs, like free lunches, certain programs that benefit everyone, but not to the extent where we're leeching on people. I personally utilize a lot of these programs, like for instance, in my personal life, which I feel like is a good representation of who you are as a candidate. I use public transportation all the time. I don't rely on my parents to take me everywhere.
Notice how he used that word leeching? I think that was really interesting because how do you know what someone is leeching off of the welfare system? If a student goes back for seconds after lunch, maybe it's because they didn't have breakfast or they know they won't be able to have dinner. How do you define leeching? Personally, my campaign believes that we should have more compassion for students and we should have care and compassion for our students in order to improve the mental health and that sort of sense of community and safety and belonging at our school. We shouldn't be accusing people of taking advantage of the systems we provide. We should instead be focused on providing that help for the students who need it the most. And so I believe that my campaign and that is the best pick because we care about every single student here, and we're not going to accuse you of taking advantage of the things that we provide just because we don't understand your situation. We're just going to reach out a helping hand to anyone who needs it. No questions asked, because why do you want to tell us about your private lives, right? We want to help people regardless of their situation. And actually, I believe that the people with the situations that they don't want to talk about are the ones who need help the most. So a vote for us is a vote for kindness and a sense of community at this school.
Utilize.
And yours?
Kind.
All right. This concludes our debate.
Woo!
All right, back to me, I guess. So I'm gonna be interviewing one of our candidates on the outside.
Hello, Mickey Mouse News House. Hello.
All right, so what is a unique stance you have on the issue compared to your other candidates?
What makes us unique is that we're a 4th through 12th grade, right? There's a sense of community. If you've been here even from 6th grade, you get a real sense that you belong, not belonging to school, but you're a part of it and that you have friends that you know for a long time. And I feel like dividing that isn't a great idea. Well, I believe in sort of a three-pronged approach to that. Number one, more study spaces. As you said, kind of sucks that if you want to study somewhere, you either have to hijack the classroom, sit outside on those uncomfortable benches, or sit silently in the library. I typically like to go out to the library to study at places like CSUN or UCLA, and they have open areas where you can talk, discuss, have fun. Everything we was talking about, all really reserved for younger students, not seniors. And I would like to have more things for seniors, so having more high school events where people can come together in a circle, the garden, make the garden a senior-only place. I feel like it's great. You know, have a lot of senior events here, at least high school. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for your
of course.
comments. Thank you. This is someone, MMN, Mickey Mouse News House. Back to you. Yeah, everything. Okay. Hey guys, it's Lily Silva with MMN, Mickey Mouse News House. We are at the Left Party debate with our presidential candidates, Mia Hong. So, to summarize, what is the most important issues? We talked about a lot of issues today, but what is the most important issue?
It's nice to talk to you again, Layla. And I think that the most important issue is that lunchline issue, because in order to improve both our sense of community and just students, and just to help solve the problems that students are dealing with every day, that is something that we really need to deal with.
Right, good stance, good stance. In addition, the right party candidates today talked about, possibly segregating 4th and 5th graders away. What do you think about that?
I don't think that's the right solution. All of those candidates were up there talking about how they want to decrease the budget, and I just don't see how they could do that while sectioning off students. Candidates that were up there today with the right party were here for 4th and 5th grade, and so I think that it is I think that they're not extending the compassion that the upperclassmen, when they were in elementary school, were extending to them. And again, when we're talking about disciplinary codes for the district, not just the school, there are so many pathways and options that we have for disciplining students who do things like use hateful speech, like slurs. And so I think it is super important that we have real, actual consequences for people, because personally, when I go around and I hear that language, it doesn't make me feel, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And that sort of sense of discomfort at this school sort of takes away from the feeling of, safety and community and belonging. And I think in order to improve that, we have to have more consequences for students who use this language.
Alright, well, thank you so much for your opinions. It is, Lily Silva with MMN. We'll see you guys with another candidate. Thank you.